Got news all over the place for every program across the country. Coaching changes, early enrollees, recruiting still left to be done for February signing period. And that includes at USC, and especially since the 2020 schedule's out in the Pac-12 as of Wednesday. We got Matt Lowry on the line from Conquest Chronicles to talk some USC football with us. Please join Matt there on SB Nation. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself, Mark?
I'm doing great. We both have our USC colors on. So
Yes,
this is apropos. We'll get after it here. So I'm looking at that 2020 schedule that the Pac-12 released on Wednesday. And as I just mentioned to you just a couple of seconds ago before we started to record, the first thing I look at with the Pac-12 in particular, you got 12 teams in the conference. You got a 9-game schedule. That means you've got 11 other possible opponents. And for USC, that means you miss 2 teams in the conference. Not necessarily good news for them. They miss Washington State and Oregon State, 2 of the lesser teams in the North Division. But as you glance through the schedule, obviously that big one right out of the gate, neutral site in Dallas, jumps off the table. No question, right in your face with Alabama and knowing what happened 3 years ago in that same site. So your thoughts about the schedule as you give it a look?
You know what? I felt this is a fairly balanced schedule for USC. You know, you start off with Alabama, which really that's not the most ideal thing for USC fans, considering what happened a few years ago. But after that, you get New Mexico, and then they travel to Stanford to open the Pac-12 play, which seems like an annual thing to play Stanford early on and to open up conference play. Considering right now Stanford is, I don't know where they're at right now. They're kind of in a tricky spot right now.
They were awful last year.
They were. So, I mean, it's some fairly good games and actually some winnable games. I mean, the one that sticks out the most to me is September 26th when Arizona State comes to the Coliseum, and as well as November 7th and November 14th when they play Oregon and Washington in back-to-back weeks, which is not ideal to begin with. So I think that back half of that schedule is going to be very tough, but if they could sustain it, and if they could go into their bye week, which is going to come, I'd say, October 20, or actually around October 24th or something like that. If they can get through their Pac-12 schedule or the rest of that schedule with one loss, they'll be in good position moving forward, hitting that back half of that schedule when they play Oregon, Washington, and Notre Dame at that time. So it'll be those are some things that I think you have to keep an eye on for USC.
So right out of the gate, in terms of division play, they play what most likely are going to be the 2 most formidable teams that are contend with them for the Pac-12 South Division. As you mentioned, Arizona State in the Coliseum, and then they go to Utah the next week. So you would love to have the big games spaced out so you can prepare for those opponents, and especially after bye weeks, which they've got Colorado after a bye week, so that's not necessarily going to help them much. They've got Oregon and Washington back-to-back, and then, of course, got UCLA as the last Pac-12 game at the Rose Bowl, and Notre Dame to finish up, and we'll see how important that game is, depending on how, of course, it's not going to affect the Pac-12 race, but if USC overachieves, then it could be huge nationally. I got to tell you, Matt, in recent years, obviously, the Pac-12 has not been the conference that it was 5 or 6 years ago and before that, but every time I look at USC's schedule, it seems to be one of the tougher schedules in the country. And when you schedule Alabama on top of the annual date with Notre Dame, and that turns out to be the non-conference slate, just about nobody in the country is going to match up with that non-conference schedule difficulty when you talk about a team that's going to be, I don't care that they lost 2 games this past year. They were one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country. And then Notre Dame's going to be one of the 10 or 12 best teams in the country. And that's the base of the non-conference schedule right there. And then again, within the Pac-12, I don't know that the conference, maybe the the administration there at the conference needs to understand that this is the marquee program in the conference. Maybe they need to do them a few more favors. But Arizona State and Utah, I don't know that exactly helps the cause right out of the gate in division play back to back.
It doesn't, because Arizona State's going to be a tough team heading into the season. They're going to have loads of talent. I think if anything, Arizona State is going to be the one team in the Pac-12 South that pushes USC. Utah, they're going to be losing a lot of people, but again, it's going to be a short week. So I mean, you got to go to Utah on a Friday night. That doesn't always speak well, and considering how USC does against Utah in Salt Lake City as of recent, it's not always the best mix to play Utah on the road at nighttime on a Friday night. So I mean, it's going to be tough.
Man, I'm glad you pointed out that it was a Friday night, because I didn't check that out. So that makes no sense that you make the road team travel if you're going to on the short week. So you give USC the short week. They both have a short week, obviously, but then you make them travel. So I don't necessarily know how that works out. I think that could have been planned a little bit better. But anyway, there it is for USC. Again, it's highlighted by Alabama neutral site to start the season. Notre Dame, that's going to be at the Coliseum to finish out the season. We'll see how important that is from a national basis. You missed two teams in the Pac-12. Oregon State's improving, but still would be a team that you would want to see on the schedule. Washington State's coming off a down 6-7 season and lose Mike Leach as head coach. So again, you probably want to see them. You probably play the four best teams in the North Division and miss the two worst, most likely, unless Stanford's not able to bounce back as well. So difficult schedule for the Trojans again here in 2020.